Hello. I'm 78 years old, and when you reach this stage of life, something interesting happens. People stop asking you about your dreams, your plans, your ambitions. Instead, they look at you, and they wonder how you're living. Not in a curious way, in a concerned way. Almost every time I step out, whether it's to buy groceries, pick up supplies, or just take a walk, someone eventually asks me a version of the same question. Are you okay being by yourself? Don't you feel lonely in that big house? Sometimes it's said with kindness, sometimes with pity, and I always give them a small smile, because I know they wouldn't understand the real answer. But the truth is, I didn't always feel this way. There was a time when being alone felt like the worst thing that could happen to me. That time began the day my wife passed away. We had spent decades together, shared routines, shared silence, shared everything. When you live that long with someone, they don't just become part of your life, they become part of how your life functions, and when they're gone, it's not just their absence you feel, it's the collapse of everything familiar. The house didn't change, but it didn't feel like home anymore. I remember walking into the kitchen the morning after she was gone. Everything was in its place. Her mug was still there. The chair she used to sit in was exactly where it had always been. But something was missing, something you can't see. But you feel immediately energy, presence, life, and in its place, there was silence, not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind, the kind that sits on your chest and makes everything feel slower. I tried to distract myself at first. I would turn on the television and let it run all day, even when I wasn't watching. I would move from one room to another, pretending I had something to do, but I didn't. I was just trying to outrun the quiet. Nights were the hardest. Because when the world goes quiet, your thoughts get louder. You remember things, small things, the way she laughed, the way she called your name from another room, the little habits you didn't even notice when she was there. And suddenly, all of it comes back at once. That's what loneliness felt like to me back then. Not just being alone, but feeling like something inside you had been taken away. For a long time, I believed the only solution was to fill that space again, to find someone, to rebuild what was lost, because that's what we're taught, isn't it? That life is meant to be shared, that being alone means something is wrong, but time has a way of teaching you things no one else can. Slowly, without me even realizing it, things started to change. Not dramatically, not all at once, just small shifts. I started waking up earlier, not because I had to, but because I couldn't sleep the way I used to. One morning, I decided to sit outside. It was quiet, the kind of quiet I had been running from. I had a cup of coffee in my hand, and nothing else. No television, no phone, no distraction, just me and the sound of the morning. At first, it felt uncomfortable, like I was facing something I had been avoiding, but I stayed there, and the next day, I did it again and again, until eventually it stopped feeling uncomfortable. It started to feel grounding. I began to notice things I had ignored for years. The way the light changes as the sun rises, the sound of birds before the world gets noisy, the feeling of sitting still without needing to go anywhere. It was simple, but it was real. I started building my days around that simplicity. I worked with my hands again, fixed things, built things, not because I needed to, but because it gave me a sense of control, a sense of presence. I read books I had been putting off for decades, and slowly, something inside me settled. I wasn't chasing happiness anymore. I wasn't trying to escape anything. I was just living. And for the first time since my wife passed, I felt okay. Not excited, not overly joyful, but peaceful. And that peace is something people don't talk about enough. Because it doesn't look impressive. It doesn't look like success. It doesn't look like happiness. It just looks like a quiet life. And people misunderstand it. My family started to worry. My daughter would visit and look at me like something was missing. She would say, "You shouldn't be alone all the time. You need people. You need connection." And I understand where she was coming from, but what she didn't see was that I had already gone through the hardest part. What I had now was not loneliness, it was stability. But when enough people question your peace, you start to question it yourself. You start to think, maybe I've become too comfortable, maybe I'm missing something, so eventually I decided to try again. I met someone, and in the beginning it felt good. There's no denying that. Having someone to talk to, someone who listens, someone who brings energy into your life, it wakes something up inside you. For a moment I felt younger, more alive, like I had stepped back into something I thought was gone forever. We went out, talked, laughed, and I thought, maybe this is what people meant. Maybe this is what I needed. But life doesn't reveal the full picture at the beginning. It shows you just enough to pull you in. The reality comes later, and in my case, it came quietly. At first, it was small things. My routine started to change. The quiet mornings I had grown to love became conversations, plans, distractions. My time didn't feel as flexible anymore. There was always something to respond to, something to attend, something to adjust. And then I started noticing something deeper. I was getting tired. Not physically at first, mentally, emotionally. At this age, your energy is limited. You don't have the same capacity to constantly adapt, to constantly give, to constantly engage. And I was using that energy without realizing it. Little by little, I started to feel drained. But instead of acknowledging it, I ignored it. Because I didn't want to seem ungrateful, I didn't want to hurt someone. So I kept going along with it, saying yes when I wanted to say no, smiling when I needed silence, and that's when I started losing something important, myself. I was no longer living naturally. I was adjusting constantly, changing my pace, my habits, my preferences, just to maintain something that didn't feel right anymore. And one morning, it became clear. I walked into my kitchen early, like I used to, picked up my coffee, and just stood there. No noise, no conversation, just a moment. And in that moment, I felt it, discomfort, not because I was alone, but because I had forgotten what peace felt like. That's when I realized something I couldn't ignore anymore. In trying to avoid being alone, I had abandoned the version of life that actually made me feel whole. And once you realize that, everything changes. So I made a decision. A difficult one, but a necessary one. I walked away. There were conversations, emotions, disappointment. People didn't understand. Some thought I was making a mistake. Others thought I was choosing isolation. But they were wrong. Because what I returned to was not emptiness. It was peace. The kind of peace that doesn't depend on anyone else. The kind that allows you to wake up and feel like your life belongs to you. Now I live simply. I wake up when I want. I spend my time how I choose. I sit in silence, and I enjoy it. And for the first time in a long time, I feel complete. That doesn't mean there are no moments. There are. A memory, a quiet evening, a passing thought. But I don't run from those moments anymore. Because I understand something now. Being alone is not the problem. Losing yourself is. And sometimes you can lose yourself even when someone else is right beside you. So if you're listening to this and you feel pressure from people, from society, from your own thoughts, telling you that you need someone to be happy, take a step back. Ask yourself honestly, are you truly unhappy? Or are you just afraid of being alone? Because those are not the same thing. There is nothing wrong with a quiet life. There is nothing wrong with choosing your own company. And sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is to sit in your own presence and realize you are enough. Because in the end, peace is not something you find in another person. It's something you build within yourself. And once you have it, you protect it. no matter what.